The ashes of the Second World War had barely settled when a terrifying new race began. The Soviet Union found itself falling behind its American rivals, and its leadership demanded a nuclear weapon immediately. To build that bomb, they carved a massive, restricted compound deep into the Ural Mountains. For decades, this place had no official name and did not exist on any public map. This location eventually became the most radioactive town on Earth. Yet when the gates finally opened and the lethal truth was exposed, the people locked inside aggressively defended the government that poisoned them. Understanding how thousands of people learn to love their own lethal prison requires looking at exactly how the human mind reacts when survival is tied to absolute secrecy. By 1945, the Soviet economy was broken. Across the country, ordinary citizens were starving, standing in freezing lines just to secure a ration of stale bread. But the reality was completely different for the scientists and workers recruited the following year to build the Mayak nuclear facility. They were placed in an adjacent, unnamed settlement, known simply by its postal code, City 40. Here, residents lived like royalty. In exchange for their labor, the state provided imported clothes, premium healthcare, and grocery stores stocked with caviar and fresh fruit. The cost of that lifestyle was total isolation. The government's surround was treated as treason. The residents accepted this arrangement. They willingly traded their freedom of movement for the absolute guarantee of food, housing, and elite status. Inside the Mayak plant, the directors operated under extreme pressure. The central government needed weapons-grade plutonium so urgently that standard safety measures were completely ignored. This map traces the Techa River flowing from the Mayak facility. Between 1949 and 1952, operators dumped tons of highly radioactive waste straight into the water. Flowing into downstream villages, doctors soon reported sudden spikes in hair loss, pregnancy complications, and aggressive cancers. When those doctors tried to sound the alarm, the secret police confiscated their medical records. They were strictly banned from using the word radiation and forced to write down a fake diagnosis they called special disease. The authorities actively chose to let ordinary citizens die in order to protect the illusion that the nuclear project was safe and under control. That illusion shattered on September 29, 1957. A cooling system inside a waste storage tank holding 80 tons of radioactive liquid completely failed. The resulting blast threw a 160-ton concrete lid into the air and devastated the immediate facility. As this diagram illustrates, the blast shot a radioactive cloud into the sky that eventually settled over 20,000 square kilometers, contaminating an area home to nearly 300,000 people. This became known as the Kyshtym Disaster. The outside world heard nothing. Inside City 40, officials assured the residents it was simply a minor chemical accident and ordered them to scrub the streets and wash their homes. Surrounded by catastrophic radiation and a poisoned river, the citizens complied. They continued to go to work, raise their children, and live their designated lives. It wasn't until 1994, after the fall of the Soviet Union, that the city was finally placed on a map. Given the official name Ozersk, the gates were unlocked and residents were legally permitted to leave. After generations of being lied to and exposed to toxic fallout, the vast majority of the 80,000 residents chose to stay. A nearby dumping site that became so saturated with waste that standing on its shore for just 1 hour delivered a lethal dose of radiation. The government's eventual solution was to pour thousands of tons of concrete directly into the lake, physically paving over the poisoned water. The reason these people remained in Ozersk was a triumph of psychological conditioning. From birth, they were taught that they were the ultimate saviors of their country, replacing traditional religion with total devotion to the state. That conditioning ran so deep that residents viewed their failing health not as a tragedy, but as a patriotic sacrifice. They wore their radiation exposure like battle scars, earned defending the motherland. The physical barbed wire was removed decades ago, but the mental barriers remained entirely intact. The residents were given a choice, and they chose the comfort of their invisible utopia over the uncertainty of the outside world. When a society is willing to trade absolute truth for guaranteed security, it slowly surrenders its free will. Because a cage, no matter how much gold it is painted with, is still a cage.